Equations. We're going to have a look at some equations, which is basically algebra that has an equal sign. So this means that both sides of the equation have to be equal at all times. When you are asked to do things with equations, no longer are you asked to simplify as you would be when you see algebra. You're being asked to solve now. So in these questions, you have to find the answer for the letter. When we are solving an equation, in order to do that, what we need to do is do the opposites to both sides. We basically need to undo the equation. We need to see how it's been formed in the first place and undo it by doing the opposites to both sides. The reason we do it to both sides is because we need to keep both sides equal. And we need to do it in the reverse order. So almost as if we hit the rewind on a DVD player or the rewind on a video and we watch it play back, it doesn't go in an opposite order, it goes in the reverse order. It doesn't go in some random order, it goes exactly in the reverse way that it was formed in the beginning. And what we need to end up with is we need to end up with getting the letter by itself. So let's have a look at the first couple of questions. Equations, these ones we're going to do, are just ones that will be 1 or 2 steps. So this means they will involve us doing 1 or 2 steps in reverse order in order to get the letter by itself. The first one we look at is y plus 7 equals 10. Starting with the letter, what has happened to the letter to create this equation? Well, we started with y and then we added 7. We don't need to worry about the equals because the equals is actually the answer. So it doesn't tell us anything about what happened to form this equation. So there's one step done in this equation, so there's one step we need to undo. The opposite of plussing 7 is minus 7, and what we need to do is make sure that we write it underneath and down the page. It's important that you make sure you line up your working out properly down the page and underneath each other. Okay, so lining up the equal signs, this plus 7 and minus 7, if I had 7 then I took 7 away, I end up with nothing. So that's cancelled out. I've now got just the letter by itself, and 10 take away 7 leaves me with 3. The 3 dots I've put out the front there are therefore, and they mean therefore I've finished the answer and I now have solved because I have found an answer for my letter. Have a look at this side. Again, I'm using the letter y, and let's have a look at what happened to y to form this equation. This is a 2-step equation, and that means that 2 steps were involved in forming the equation. So what happened to y first? Well, right in front of it is a 3, which means times by 3. So y got times by 3, and that was the first step. Then the second step that happened was we obviously got an answer for that, and then we took away 2. Remember again, the equals 10, we don't need to worry about that, that's just the answer. So the 2 steps that happened was we times by 3 and we minused 2. Now when we hit rewind, we need to go back in the reverse order. So the last thing we did was minus 2, so that means it's the first thing we're going to undo. The opposite of minus 2 is plus 2. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side to keep both sides equal. Line up your equal signs. 10 plus 2 gives me an answer of 12. Minus 2 plus 2 cancels each other out. I've still got one step to go, so that means I'm still left with 3y. That's one of my 2 steps done. The next step, what happened to y? Well, in the very beginning it got times by 3, and that's all that's been left with. The opposite of times by 3 is divide by 3. Line up your equal signs. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Divide by 3 and times by 3 will cancel each other out, and I'm left just with the answer. I've now solved, I found the answer for the letter, therefore out the front with your 3 dots, y equals 4. Coming up to this side, here I've used x, and this again is a 2-step equation, so that means there was 2 steps involved in forming this equation, and there'll be 2 steps involved in solving the equation. So let's have a look what happened to x first. Well, x got multiplied by 2 first to get 2x. Then we divided, remember divide by is the same as fraction line, divided by 7. Again, we don't have to worry about that. So times by 2, then divided by 7. The last thing we did, which will be the first thing we undo, is dividing by 7. So the opposite of divide by 7 is to times by 7. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side to keep it equal. Line up your equal signs. 4 times 7 is 28. The times 7 and the fraction line, which means divide by 7, cancels out, and I'm left with 2x. What's now happening to the x is it's being multiplied by 2. I need to undo it. It's the last of my second step. The opposite of timesing is dividing. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side. Okay, lining up your equal signs. 28 divided by 2 is 14. The times 2 and the divide 2 cancel out, and I'm left with, therefore, x equals 14. Next one, again this is a two-step equation. What happened to x first is it was minused from 9. Then we divided the whole thing by 8. So the last thing we did was dividing the whole thing by 8. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of that divide by 8. How we do that is by doing opposites. The opposite of divide by or fraction line is times. So timesing by 8, timesing by 8. Lining up your equal signs. 6 times 8 is 48. That divide by or fraction line and times by 8 cancels out, and I have x take away 9. Now I have one step left to do. Minus 9 is what's happening to the x. The opposite of minus is to plus. What you do to one side, you've got to do to the other side to keep them equal. Line up your equal signs. 48 plus 9 is 57. The minus 9 and the plus 9 cancels out, and I end up with, therefore, x equals 57. One last quick one to do, number 5. If I have k over 7 plus 3 equals 5. Again, this is a two-stepper. What happened to k first? It was divided by 7. What happened next? It was plus 3. What was the last thing we did? We added 3. So that's the first thing we've got to undo, going back in reverse order. So minusing 3 from both sides, line up your equal signs. 5 take away 3 is 2. Plus 3 minus 3 cancels each other out. I'm left with k over, or k divided by 7 is what fraction line means. The opposite of dividing by, I've only got one step to do now, is to times. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side. Lining up your equal signs. 2 times 7 equals 14. The times and the divide, which is the fraction line, cancel out, and I'm left with, therefore, k equals 14. You can now work on exercise 8.1. It's on page 333. I'm going to ask you to do question 1, 2 and 3, only the first column, please. So if the questions are down in columns, it might be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. I only want you to do the first column of each question, please.